guys? This is Kellen from Killing for Company, and today I am bringing another heavy Metallurgy album review for you. Today I'm talking about the newest release from Profane Order. This is One Nightmare Unto Another. So their newest release here comes to us from Nuclear War Now Productions. And what about Profane Order? So they are at this point, a two-piece from Montreal, Canada, and they play in a style of, you look at this, let's just get this out of the way. You look at that album cover, right? You've got your Chris Moyen kind of artwork, right? Some satanic figure, black, even just the color scheme, right? The black, red, white look to it. This is a bestial black metal record. We can debate the terminology here, but you know what I mean, right? So what makes them unique? Let's be quick and to the point about this Profane Order band. Two-piece, Jordan Kelly goes by Illusory, and a new addition to the band. They play in a guy who plays guitar and bass on this record. They play together in another project called Scum Strike, but Olcador, guy from Ireland, comes over and he has joined Illusory for this Profane Order release. It's primarily Illusory's band. He's been the consistent member since the beginning. I believe here in 2016 we get the first demo, 2017 EP, 2019 the first full length with Slave Morality, and here 2023, about 3.5 years later, their full length. This style of music is not known for its artistic experimentation or its avant-garde nature. Bestial black metal, for lack of a better term, at this point in 2023, you have your far more traditional kind of blasphemy, archgoat style bands, and what you see increasingly more and more is a introduction for power electronics into this kind of genre. Profane Order doesn't really go that direction, quite the opposite actually. What makes this band unique is they give you a little bit more to chew on. They've turned essentially, a style that's rooted in blasphemy, archgoat. I think the hype sticker here also mentions Demon Sea. You know many of the bands in this style, Bestial Warlust, etc. They take that style and they infuse it with, like I said, something more to chew on. Probably the best source of inspiration I would point you towards is crust punk or stenchcore. So bands like Sanctum or Stormcrow, Mass Graves, a band from Canada to mention here, Cancer Spreading. If you look at those bands, all roads point towards something like Bolt Thrower. And what I mean to say that is, what makes Profane Order in 2023 captivating is they've taken a sort of bestial black metal sound and infused it with a kind of old school death metal, if you will, riff, writing, structure, appeal. Well, I think calling this a death metal band is probably not the best way to describe them. For anyone who knows Bolt Thrower's history and their relationship to crust punk and grindcore, it's important to mention that that's sort of our trajectory, right? Is they're pulling from that influence via more current or modern crust punk bands like I mentioned. If you know anything about a band like Cancer Spreading or Stormcrow, that's going to make sense to you, right? Mass Grave's going to make sense to you. And that's the immediate appeal. Is for fans who are well associated with modern death metal, this is going to be a great point of entrance into the bestial black metal sound. That is the initial appeal. That's why I think they've been given a good amount of interest and fascination from the modern extreme metal fan base. So what makes this record a little bit different? For anyone showing up to look at this record and they want to make sure that the old Profane Order sound is still there, it absolutely is. So don't be too worried. While there are some differences, we'll get into those. What you love about this band has remained intact. Since their move from Sentient Ruin to Nuclear War Now, the core sort of elements of this band are present. Halfway into the first track, In the Shadows of the Past, we get Illusory belting out this scream. It moves straight into sort of this churning, slow burn, kind of breakdown, heavy riff. Not what you're used to getting out of this subgenre by any means, but for fans who are a little bit exhausted of bands doing the blasphemy on repeat sound, it's a welcome change. And it was ultimately what made Profane Order so interesting to begin with. That continues over onto side B of this record. Pernicious Scum, almost the song begins from the outset with that kind of appeal. Slow, doom-laden kind of riff. Bands like Diocletian and Archgoat before them played with this style, these slow sort of burn style riffs to accent all the punishing blast beat driven black metal essentially, but never have they sort of done it in a way that would accent this kind of crust punk element. So it is a little bit different and unique to this band. The rest of the record, I should say, is going to keep everyone else who shows up to a bestial black metal record, we're going to keep you happy there. It's an aggressive extreme metal listen. So here we have 7 tracks. All told turns into a little over 25 minutes. So relatively short record. Most of them clock under 4 minutes. That being said, for anyone who's familiar for looking at like a Morbosidad track listing and seeing a bunch of 2-minute songs, the 7 tracks, 25 minutes sort of average will also be an indication there's more death metal dynamics in songwriting or crust punk dynamics in songwriting on display here. So we'll keep you happy, right? Plenty of big, slow burn riffs to enjoy. So for the changes on this record, the key features are going to be 1, the vocal performance, and 2, the production. Illusory's vocal performance on previous releases, most notably Slave Morality in 2019 and Titan Noose of Sanctimony, the EP that was released in 2017, you had this dual vocal approach. So you had a higher register scream, then you had this low bellowing sort of guttural vocal approach as well that was often sort of doubled. Now that's standard within the genre, and of course it's drenched in tons of reverb. So these extreme black metal vocals sort of echoing through the desecrated temple absolutely was a part of their sound. This time around on One Nightmare Unto Another, we don't get a lot of those doubled vocals. Most of the time it is spent at a much higher vocal register, and the lower portion has been removed. It does show up every once in a while on this record, but relative to the previous releases, it's a little bit dulled down. Now, that has also coincided with a change in production. And it should be mentioned that Illusory here is part of a black metal project in Canada, in Montreal. Most people will know it as Spectral Wound. Well, the reason I bring that up has to do with the production team here. So James Plotkin is the guitarist for Spectral Wound, and in the past has been part of the production team that handled all of Profane Order's previous releases. Now, on the last full-length Slave Morality, he came in and handled purely the mastering, and once again, he's handling the mastering here on Nightmare. However, there are sort of different producers who are brought in for recording, mixing, etc. So this time around, Patrick McDowell is brought in previously on Slave Morality with Arthur Rizek. They're well-known, established, popular producers. The difference between the Rizek production versus this McDowell production is the degree that this one is pretty cleaned up by comparison. I don't want to say it sounds like sterile or mechanical or overproduced per se, but it has the feel a little bit more of a death metal sound versus that of a bestial black metal record. For a lot of fans, that won't be an issue, especially if you're new to this band. It'll still sound relatively aggressive, coarse, punishing, intense, right? I would even go so far to say that the attack, the clarity, how articulate this record is at times with all those dynamics at play, right? The precision to this record in some ways gives the accuracy of all of the attack and onslaught. It's brought to with greater clarity, and to some degree you could say greater impact. The drawback to that is that it loses a little bit of its atmosphere. Here we get probably where I would potentially be critical. Those changes versus, let's say, Slave Morality, their previous release. I think, for me personally, it serves as a detraction. Sanctimony and Morality, Slave Morality, had a little bit more of a black metal atmosphere. And when you take away that sort of double vocal effect, it sort of saturated in a lot of the space that, relative to this release here, feels a little bit too polished for my personal taste. I don't mind sort of the burnt sulfur saturating the room in order to convey the kind of atmosphere I want from a bestial black metal release. So in that regard, I felt it was a little bit, it fell short of my expectations. We'll just say that. There was one thing I wanted more from this record. It was that a return or retaining the same kind of atmosphere it had on previous releases. So combined with the change in vocal approach, in that sense it fell short a little bit of my expectation and desire for this release. Now, that being said, I do think at some level, I don't know if it was a very deliberate decision to clean up this record. I can imagine it's going to get a whole lot of attention and acclaim because of the fan base that it'll potentially pull in. I really want to drive home the point that this is not by any means a mainstream release. This is a Nuclear War Now is the right place for this band. It's absolutely within the wheelhouse from the record label, and I think they'll get a whole lot of promotional push as a consequence. I really enjoyed listening to this record, and the songs that they are writing here, I think, are not going to disappoint anyone. If anything, I wish there was more than 25 minutes of it. Stretching this out for another couple songs to past 25 minutes, so 30 plus minutes. If I had 9 to 10 tracks, that would be ideal for me. But that's only because the quality of the songwriting here, I think, continues to sort of push the envelope, and you get their intense, punishing, short, kind of grind, blast beat driven black metal moments. They're on display. When they want to go heavy and groove and slow burn this record, it's done with a greater sense of force and clarity. So in that sense, the songwriting here is the strengths are even amplified relative to previous releases. It's just the production element pulled this back from being an absolute standout for me. I'll probably return to the other records before this one. That being said, they shouldn't be disappointed, and if you're looking to get into this band, it's a great place to start. For, I guess, the last piece I would say here in closing is, depending on what your feelings are or desires for this genre, black metal is full of, and bestial black metal I would include in that conversation, is full of orthodoxy and people who have ideological convictions over what this should sound like. Including crust punk elements may be a step too far, and if you're part of that crowd, that's fine. But if you're actually interested in more than the extremity of the sound or sort of the ideological convictions that go along with bestial black metal, especially in 2023, this is a different kind of thing. This has a different kind of appeal, and I think those crust punk elements actually give this band more shelf life than often we associate with the subgenre. So in that regard, they're one of the most important bands playing in this style today, and I enjoyed listening to this record. Slightly missed the mark in terms of what I desire from the subgenre, but still, I don't know if there's going to be another bestial black metal sort of band that comes around, not just this year, but in years to come, that's going to be able to unseat what they have going on here. The formula that they have established is part of the draw, and they're doing it in a way that I think stands out in the crowd. So my final thoughts here for Profane Order, once again, One Nightmare Unto Another, on Nuclear War Now. You can pick it up. I'm sure that they have a couple different sort of variants, but CD and tape, I believe, as well, if you're interested in that. So that's my review for One Nightmare Unto Another. So my shout out goes to Scrying Mirror. We'll go with that. The album's entitled Omni Malevolence on Voidhanger Records. For those, this is, to my knowledge, the first release from the record. I could be wrong, or from this project. I could be wrong about that. But it features Maitre Thorn, who is part of, or was part of, a band called Evangelist that emerged in the late aughts, early 2010s, if you will. In a band called Evangelist, and they played in this sort of avant-garde experimental death metal style. Early on in their career, they had a whole lot of death industrial influence. Over the years, they had ventured into something a bit more atmospheric and ambient, but this project appears to be a sort of return to that death industrial experimental avant-garde death metal, which I'm absolutely all about. I was a fan of those early Evangelist records. So that is my shout out. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Check out all the other album reviews. We had a few from Simon, Ben, and earlier than that, Melanie posted a review on the Ulthar release. Until then, I'll see you guys later. Bye.